Welcome to another edition of the OK Preps Extra podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by our high school sports editor, Barry Lewis. And this is the post-state tournament recap video. We're glad you're joining us. You can check us out on Google, Apple, and Spotify, and we'll hope you'll give us a listen. Okay, Barry, you and I were just talking before we got on air here that you spent around 36 hours over 3 days inside a gym. So let's see if we can kind of sum all that up in a couple minutes here. Let's start this. Your overall impressions of the state tournament were what?
It was great for the first time since 2019 that we really had a smooth, quote, normal like state tournament experience, at least for the large schools, because in 2020 it got all canceled abruptly 90 minutes before tip-off. And so that was horrible. And then last year we had some unfortunate comments that were made on online by some announcers. So didn't have anything like that. The focus was on where it should be, the action on the court, and watching all the extremely talented basketball players we have in the state and talented teams, and seeing all that action on the court. It was just 3 wonderful days of basketball. And so finally, for the first time since 2019, we had a normal week of state tournament experience.
That sort of says a lot, Barry, that when I ask you for your takeaways and your responses, it was a normal tournament. I mean, we sort of take normal for granted of last couple of years, but when you say it was a normal tournament, you're saying that in the best way possible.
Yes, very much so. And it was great. I mean, it's what a state tournament week should be, and that we took
That's
for
right.
granted until 2020. And also remembering last year, another thing that was unfortunate, COVID was such a dark cloud over the tournament last year, even though it was played, and thankfully it was played last year, but the protocols were still so intense last year. And of course we had the stunning announcement 48 hours before the state tournament that the Rogers boys team, which had qualified for state for the first time in 25 years, it had to withdraw due to COVID. So you had a game canceled, a first round game canceled, which was so unfortunate. So this year it was smooth sailing as far as what a state tournament should be. And that was such a blessing. It was beautiful to watch, just watching for 36 hours over 3 days inside a gym, a normal 6A through 6A and 5A state tournament. I mean, in 4A through 2A, which I wasn't able to get to because I was at 6A and 5A all the time. From what I understand, that was the normal experience too, albeit spread over 5 days. So it was great that everything is back to normal pretty much.
So no shocker in 5A boys, Barry. Memorial kind of been on, after what happened to them last season, it's kind of been state title or bust for them this season. They've obviously been on a roll all year. What are your thoughts on the Chargers after having won the state title? And I was really impressed with what you wrote when Bobby Allison called. I just went blank. He called him arguably the best point guard, Ty Frierson. I couldn't recall his name. He called him arguably the best point guard in Memorial history. That's kind of high praise. So your impressions of the Chargers?
Because Memorial's had a lot of good point guards, a lot of good players. I'm in a program that's won 10 state championships. And every year they've had a good point guard when they won the state title. But yes, 5A went totally to form because at least I've been saying, and I think I'm probably not the only one, all year long that there was Memorial and Del City, and there was like a big separation between those two, with the possible exception of Carl Albert, which the defending champion. There's a big separation between those two and everybody else. And it proved to be true. And Carl Albert, even for defending champion, was a bit of a surprise because they only had 2 players with any type of really notable experience coming back on this year's team. So, but I think that was evident in the first day of the tournament, where you had 3 of the 4 quarterfinal games in 5A were decided by 30 points or more. I mean, it was just such a big separation. And then in the semifinals, you had Memorial winning by 25. And Del City got a little bit of a battle from Carl Albert, but then pulled away to win by 12. And then the championship game was just these two heavyweights that everyone had wanted to see ever since the Tournament of Champions, because they arguably, not just the two best teams in 5A by a big margin, but arguably the two best teams in any classification in the state. They went at it as a heavyweight battle, and this time Memorial came out on top. Memorial, what a season they had. I mean, they were just so dominant, except for the Del City game in the championship game of the TFC. They were just so dominant all season long. They didn't have a game, ever since losing to Del City, all their games are decided by at least 10 points or more. I mean, they just blitzed everybody. A great example of team basketball. You had your standouts, Ty Frierson, Braden Hubbard, but as Coach Bobby Allison said, they really do have 8 starters. I mean, they would come in top 3 off the bench. Jareth Ingram, 6'8", junior. He would have been starting on any other team in the state. And he comes off the bench for Memorial. And maybe the best player in the championship game was a player off the bench, played his career game, Dominic Turner. He had a plus 26 rating. That was incredible. Jareth Ingram was second at plus 19 in that game. You know, as good as the starters are, I mean, wow, Memorial was deep. It was a pretty incredible season, except for one half against Del City, which was caught in the Tournament of Champions finals, which was caused somewhat due to foul trouble, and also because Del City's really good. But an incredible season for the Memorial Chargers.
The most surprising thing you saw was what?
That I'll say that there were I guess the biggest upset. I will say the biggest upset, although we did say 6A boys was wide open coming in. I was surprised Edmund Santa Fe beat Edmund Memorial. So Edmund Santa Fe was quite the Cinderella story. And so that makes that the previous week we were wondering how, boy, that was not a good loss for Owasso to lose to Edmund Santa Fe, but now I can see Edmund Santa Fe won that game. So that would probably been the biggest on-court surprise. A big surprise in a not good way was after hearing all the doom and gloom weather forecasts Thursday night from Oklahoma City, some Oklahoma City weather people, that we could still play the tournament on time Friday. I thought, well, let's just say it should, I mean, the snow, and there was snow there, snow showers and some decent amount of snow. And you could have imagined that if this had been 3 weeks earlier, that this was a type of snow that everything would have been canceled across the state that day. But there was no need to cancel, even though they really couldn't afford to cancel last week because everyone's locked in on these dates. But there was no need to cancel. The travel conditions were good, but we've seen plenty of times when, if you just get a little bit of snow, even if travel conditions are good, you're calling everything off. So again, that was a surprise with some doom and gloom forecasts that we're able to get the tournament played on schedule.
Our colleague Bill Haston was fairly critical of the Lloyd Noble Center as a venue for a high school state tournament. What were your impressions of the Lloyd Noble Center, Barry?
I've got mixed feelings about Lloyd Noble Center. I've never really been a fan of the Lloyd Noble Center ever since the first time many years ago that I visited there. Because remember when it was built soon after the Mabee Center, sort of like in response to the Mabee Center, and they wanted to be like the next Mabee Center, but even better. But I remember the first time I went to the Lloyd Noble Center, I was like terribly let down because it's not nearly as good as Mabee Center and has not aged as well. But to me, there are a couple ways to look at it. from a perspective, if you're just going there for one game, following your team and just watching one game, I think it's pretty lousy. It's not a great experience, put it that way, just because it's Lloyd Noble Center. The environment wasn't really great. I mean, it's just sort of blah. So I'm not really. It's okay, but you could do a lot better for a state basketball tournament experience. I mean, there's only so much you can do with Lloyd Noble Center.
Yeah.
But if you were there, but if you're a fan or a person like me who's there all day long, I think it wears a little better. As far as if I'm going to be there all day long, what's the concession situation going to be like? And Lloyd Noble Center concessions have if you're going to be there all day long, because they've got better variety, better food options than Mabee Center, that would be better than Mabee Center. Now, it's not nearly as good as BOK Center or the Paycom Center, but Lloyd Noble Center is since my last trip to the state tournament there in 2009, they've got better food options now than they used to have. So if you're going to be there all day, because there's not like really any food places like right next door to there, like you have at Mabee Center, where you can walk across the street. And, if you want to park and be settled and be there all day, Lloyd Noble Center does have that over Mabee Center. But Mabee Center has better atmosphere. Other arenas have better atmosphere. So Lloyd Noble Center, I mean, I think they did the best they could do last week, but it's not a great experience. It's not a great atmosphere, I should say. It's just okay.
Yeah. Now, how long do they have it, Barry?
3 years.
3 more?
No, 2 more years. They always do.
Okay, so this year
they always bid them out on 3-year cycles. And I will say the sub sites, which are a big part of this, especially, on the first day this year, the sub sites are a big part of the equation. And I will say the sub site I went to for 5A boys at Noble, it was my first trip to Noble High School, and they have a new arena that opened just 3 years ago. It was really nice.
Okay.
I was very impressed by it. And so I really liked what they did they call it the Den at Noble High School. Cool name. It's a very impressive facility. And so that's a plus. I will say for Lloyd Noble Center, a plus for them is the scoreboard. They did a great job operating the scoreboard there, as far as like all stats were spot on, video board good, and that's huge. I mean, and that was, of course, remember why the Mabee Center got into problems in the first place with the Tournament of Champions and then the state tournament, is because they had a new scoreboard, a really nice board there at Mabee Center, but it wasn't fully operational. It wasn't fully operational for the state tournament and the Tournament of Champions. And to have a state tournament experience, you need to have a really great scoreboard, make it feel big time. Yep. And so I will give Lloyd Noble Center that, and Noble High School as well. Video board really good. So kudos to both of them in those regards.
So let's change gears a little bit, Barry. Go to recruiting for just a second. Bixby standout 4-star recruit Parker Fredrickson. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Fredrickson, committed to Oklahoma State. He's, like I said, 4-star recruit according to 24/7 Sports. What do you think about that decision?
Well, I would say this about any recruit who commits as a junior at this time. There's a long way between now and November. So, sure. Right. I mean, that would be a great get for OSU. Parker's got he's got a lot of ability, and I can see him having a lot of college success. Although it is hard to totally evaluate him now, just because especially this year on his team, he didn't have much help. And so he's playing on a team that's not winning a lot, but he is really good. And if he winds up at OSU, that's going to be a great addition. That's going to be a really great addition for OSU. So, but as I say to everybody, I think half the people who commit at this time of the year, whether it be football, basketball, no matter who it is, they don't wind up where they commit. Of course, we've seen these days people, when they sign, don't necessarily wind up where they sign with. And so we'll see. But Parker Fredrickson, very nice talent.
Let's talk about all world for a second, Barry. So now that the winter sports are over and we kind of turn our attention to spring, do we have an ETA on when we're going to publish all world teams for boys basketball, girls basketball, swimming, and wrestling?
Probably look forward around mid-April.
Okay.
So that's something to look forward to. And also we'll be keeping you advised when the specific dates will be. So it takes us a bit of time after that, because this is spring break week, so we can't get right to the coaches and start working on this really, or because it is spring break week and we want to give coaches a time off too. And so look forward to mid-April. And we also want to encourage all coaches as we start our spring sports coverage. Well, we've already started it to some extent, that call in your scores. We're not getting many call-ins so far from baseball coaches or any soccer, any of the spring sports. So give us a call or send us an email with your score or scoring summary. You can email us at sports@tulsaworld.com. That's sports@tulsaworld.com. Call it in at 918-581-8355. And or if you've got any questions about that or what you need to do about that, send me an email at barry.lewis@tulsaworld.com. And because we want to publicize your team's results. A couple schools are doing really well. And so there's no reason why everyone else can't be doing well on this, and help us help you.
Well, Barry, what else is on your mind?
Well, it was a really fun week of high school basketball, long week, but a fun week of high school basketball. But I guess one thing that sticks with me, and I'll preface this by saying it was a fun, exciting season of high school basketball, not so much college basketball around here, but high school basketball. But it was last week was sort of although Memorial did great, and congratulations again to the Chargers, it was collectively for Tulsa area teams a bit of a fizzle at the end of the year, as far as what we thought a month or two ago could be accomplished, as far as winning state championships or getting the state championship games for Tulsa area schools. I thought we expected in 6A boys to have more than 2 teams at the state tournament. And I think that Booker T and Jenks, definitely going into the state tournament, thought that one of them would get to the championship game, and it didn't happen. As it turned out, the losses to Edmund North that they both suffered weren't quite as horrible as I thought at the time, because Edmund North is really, I underrated them all year long. They've got one of the best players in the state, Dylan Warlick. Great coach, Scott Norris, who was longtime coach at Coweta. And so they were really, really good. But I think it was realistic that either Booker T or Jenks, especially the way they went into the state tournament, was going to do something at the state tournament. Didn't happen. 6A girls, Bixby so close to a state title, had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. Give Edmund North credit for the comeback, but it was just so close for Bixby. I think they've got a great team. I was one of the few people, I think, picking Bixby to win the 6A girls state title, because Edmund North was pretty much the favorite. But So when you think of the 10 state championship games that were played last week, Tulsa area teams were only in 3 of them. Mm-hmm. So you had, besides those 2 that we mentioned, besides Memorial boys and Bixby girls, Victory Christian boys in 4A coming through the area losers bracket. They came into this postseason ranked 2nd, and they achieved that. So they met expectations, but they, again, were so close to winning a state title. So collectively, it was not a great week. Just as last year, we could say the same thing. It was not a great week for Tulsa area schools collectively, with, an exception of Memorial boys.
Yeah.
So that's, but that's the state tournament. It's all about matchups and making the plays. So.
Yep. All right, Barry, we'll leave it there for this week. Appreciate the knowledge as always, and we'll catch up again next week.
All right. Sounds good, Patrick.